Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for the inaugural session. Let's thank Mr. Suresh for a warm and cordial welcome and for so beautifully setting the tone for 2 exciting days ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the inaugural session, and we're going to put the spotlight on bringing alive the future of fashion through innovation, consumer insights, and retail differentiation.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Okay, let me give you one secret. On your table, there are fruits. All of you must have thought these are plastic fruits. You can actually eat them. They are real fruits. So please eat some fruits, get some energy, and at least say good morning back to me. Good morning. That's a little better. And you know what happened? I don't know how many of you have attended school here. All of you know? All of us always like to sit at the back bench. So you always had the front bench empty. I never thought the CEOs will do that. When CEOs work in their company, they want to capture that corner office, the big chair. And here, look at the CEOs. They left the 2 big chairs. 2 of you will have to move to the center chair, or I'll have to move you in. Decide quickly. Yeah, by the time I talk to you, I'll let them decide about it. Okay, I just want to get a feel of the audience. Hey, come on, 2 of you will have to move here. Huh? Otherwise, I'll make a choice. Let me get the audience feel. How many of you are from consulting background here? Raise your hands. Not many. Yeah, how many of you are from retail background? Very good. And how many of you are from fashion background? Wow, very good. And how many of you come with no background? Because if you come with no background, you're going to learn a lot today, because here are guys who spent the last 30, 40, 50 years, 15, 20 years working and building brands in this country. And we have a fantastic panel, and we are trying to go and discuss about the future of fashion. We'll try our best to extract what best we can from the panel, spend about 45, 50 minutes, and post that we'll get into Q&A if time permits, and we'll do a short Q&A for that. Yeah? Let me start with the panel asking them about what's happening to the consumer. And let's talk about the Indian consumer. Since we have the privilege of having Tushar with us, who straddles India and the global world, all of you deal with global brands. Anyone who wants to pick up saying, how do you see the changes happening with the Indian consumer? You have a mic next to you. Please pick up the mic.
Well, let me start probably, hazarding a guess.
Keep the fashion in mind, huh?
Yes.
The fashion part of it. And I just remembered something, let me tell. Just now we were talking and we were chatting, and Tushar said about how his daughter called up from whichever part of the world and says, Dad, I want the 3-stripe. I want the shoe with the 3-stripe. And he kept asking what 3-stripe. I didn't know what 3-stripe is, but in our side of South, for us 3-stripe is, that you put the 3 namas, but then he told me it is the 3-stripe. What is it? Adidas Original. Yeah, that's fashion. Yeah, all on you.
So, so I think I'll take off from what Tushar was mentioning earlier, which is that the customer, while being young, is beginning to start exerting an influence in terms of what she buys, one, and secondly, also exerting an influence on what the parents buy and what the family buys. So that's one distinct change I've seen. Second thing is that in terms of communication, those who are below 20 communicate using a screen, and those who are above 20 look at large screens like televisions or newspapers or magazines, and consequently the kind of information available to the customer of today is actually curated information. So they know exactly what they want to see or to read, and because of which they'll either be on that blog or they'll be on that particular YouTube channel or following some particular personality. So they are able to get their news, but they get their news in very different ways, and they get curated news, which is very different from the kind of news that we get, because we might probably spend 1 hour in front of the television to get 5 minutes of essence and 55 minutes of crap. So that is the second thing that they are doing. The third that I'm seeing with them is that the young of today are no different from the international young. So their understanding of what the brands brands are across the world, and what's trending is as current in India as you would probably see it in the US or in China. So to that extent, they're completely abreast of what's happening. And I think to a large extent, social media and various other channels have been able to play that role by showcasing to the world what is happening. So fashion is no longer confined to a few fashion capitals, but fashion has become more democratic and universal across the world.
I have an issue, Biju. Whenever in such panels I ask the question, tell us what's happening to the consumer, everybody wants to go across and talk about the 18 to 20. I never said what is happening to the young consumer. Tushar, are the 45s and the 50 also consumers? Are they real consumers changing? I mean, how do you see the 18 to 25 and the 25 to 45 as consumers? Or people like me, 45 to 55, very fashionable, with gray, no hair, that kind, no hair, yeah.
We see consumers in the stores across the world. So it's not only India, globally. One thing that's happening globally is that e-commerce is impacting everybody. The consumer is looking at, so again, when Mr. Nagesh said about my daughter, she called me and she said, I want the shoe. I'm like, why? I'll get you another shoe. She goes, everybody in my school is wearing this shoe. And this was 1.5 years back, even before they opened stores in India, right? So they understand that. And then I asked her, why do you want this shoe? It's your friends wearing it? Yeah, but it's available on Instagram, this YouTube channel, and it's not the Bollywood and Hollywood anymore. There are people on YouTube channel who discuss fashion, who talk about fashion, and they have a crazy following on Instagram, on YouTube, on Twitter, all the new technology. The consumer, I don't know how much time I have, so I don't want to.
I'll stop you whenever you're taking more time, don't worry.
My experience, I came to India 4 years back. I've lived abroad all my life. And I went to a city called Ahmedabad, 2010, that's 7 years back. And my leasing team was there. I went to McDonald's and I saw the customers there, all wearing Nike or, all the footwear brand, denims, t-shirt, everything. And I tell my team, wow, let's open a store here. And they come out and tell me, sir, don't open a store in Ahmedabad today. We'll test it with one. I'm like, guy, there are young kids wearing denim, t-shirt. That's what we sell. We have Mango and Promote, girls. So you didn't see the length of their women wearing the sleeves and the length of their kurtas. I'm like, what do you mean? They're wearing denim, right? Because, yeah, but look at the length. They are still conservative. They are wearing it till here. The length is here. So I'm like, explain to me how this works. He goes, Indian women, and I'm going to take 5 more minutes on this, Nagesh. If
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes, I'll finish it. Indian women, they start off with, I'm talking women consumer, men are the easiest consumers to sell to. Indian women start off with buying a watch, handbag, shoes, and then they migrate to different from the ethnic wear because the husband says, my mother-in-law, my mother is there, you only have to wear this. Still conservative in some society. And they migrate from there. And when you see that transformation happening from shoes to handbags to watches to sunglasses, denim, and then the tops. That's how we look at the consumer migration, how it happens. It is very, very important for us to do that. Secondly, we saw in our lessons, our lingerie brand, the daughter would come with the mother to buy and the grandmother. Now it is the daughter coming with her friends. That has migrated. But she introduced her to the lingerie. So consumers are changing in that matter. The younger consumer is coming to the store more and more, but they are also influenced by the e-commerce more than the older consumer. And we are seeing a lot of young consumers coming in the store. I don't know if that answers it or I just went
you've given a picture of the whole consumer spectrum from the young to the mid to the old, and also the influence of mindset in terms of the consumer. Dilip, you have been in business, high design, I don't know how many years you have seen from mid-premium to luxury. Are you seeing the consumers behaving similarly? Are you seeing more younger consumers buying high design bags? I see a lot of reds and maroons and yellows and blues in your collection rather than the black and browns.
I think looking for a simple answer to this is going to go off the track totally now. I think the market, as it gets more sophisticated, we're getting more complex, is the one thing that's very clear is that it's becoming much more segmented. Now, you mentioned that I shouldn't talk about the mass market. You're right. I don't know anything about it. But beyond that, when you get into the branded end of the market, You said don't talk about the young, but the reason we talk about the young more than the old is because the prime market at that level is 25 to 35. You can call it whatever you like. That's where the sweet market is. Above 35, they stop buying. Under 25, as we get wealthier, we are getting wealthier. We're seeing more and more that market under 25 becoming very, very important to us. But if you're working at a brand level, I think segmenting yourself, having a clear sense of who you are and what your identity is, and then going after that particular customer is where it's increasingly happening.
No, so Dilip, I just want to come to Suresh, you, and yes, we are talking of segmented customers. You deal with brands, you have a wide spectrum of brands. My issue is that when you get into segmentation of consumers, you are actually seeing into a very small market opportunity. We keep talking of the 250,000 crore market. End of the day, all our Indian brands are lying between 1,000 crores and 1,500 crores, which is what, $100 million, $150 million. So talk about saying, look at the large segment of consumers, segmentation versus a market opportunity to create a 1,000 crore brand or a 2,000 crore brand, especially people who are sitting here who are probably entrepreneurs at 100 crore, 50 crore, 30 crore. If they have to dream to become an And or a Biba or a W of 1,000 crore, 1,500 crores, where is the opportunity? How do they look at the consumers, especially in the business of fashion?
I think, first of all, apologies for sitting like this. I think, I'm not tall enough for this throne.
Oh.
So it's a bit odd for me to sit like this and talk.
Everybody's enjoying seeing you. Today you all are Rajas here. Come on. This is the Amitabh's way of hyping us up. Yeah?
So let me be a bit, contrarian in answering this question to Nagesh. See, I think, one of the problems with the fashion industry is that we just go to probably, Select City Walk and Palladium and then say that, these are our consumers. And then we only talk about, those consumers, and I think most of the brands actually go and, attack the same set of consumers, creating, that kind of a competition. I think if you really look at today's India, I think, the consumption is actually happening when in small towns on a completely different, kind of consumers, because everyone is now becoming aspirational. Because if you go and hit the same set of consumers, if they already have 30 shirts, maybe you can make it 33, but you're not going to make it, much more, and the numbers are limited. I think, we need to now start going beyond the Select City and Palladium set of consumers and then look at, the other consumers. And when I say other consumers, I'm not just talking that, you go to small towns and rural market and all that. But I think there are a lot of consumers, even in large towns, who behave actually like a small town consumer. For example, if I had to take my FMCG example and then tell you, Bombay market, I'm talking 15 years back, we used to segment into 60 markets. And that 60 markets, you can say 10 are metro markets, and 40 markets actually behave like a small tier 2 or a tier 3 city market. So I think if you really look at that set of consumers, I think there is a huge opportunity. And then if you think that, they are not brand conscious, I think that's not the, because today I think the aspirational India is there everywhere, and I would say more so because the hunger is much more there than at the top end of the market. So there is a huge opportunity to create definitely very large, because earlier, one of the reasons why you always looked at this, Select City and Palladium kind of consumers is mainly because your distribution was very restricted. See, today I think that is not a major issue, more so with e-commerce, coming in. I think there is a huge opportunity for us to reach out to those set of consumers who are more, tier 2, tier 3 kind of consumers, maybe residing in a metro, but in terms of attitude and aspirations could be quite, different today compared to what they were some time back. They are quite comfortable walking into an air-conditioned store and buying things, and they are no longer, intimidated. But we think, they will get intimidated and then not try and offer the experience to them. The other group, also that, fashion industry was very much focused towards men and not so much about women. Of course, today there are brands which are becoming 500, 600 crores focusing on, in the ethnic wear space. But if you really look at it, there is a huge amount of demand. Actually, one of the biggest trend is actually the buying, trend of women. And you ask, we talk about, the department stores, a little bit, the sales are sluggish and all that. But you ask any department store, they will say that the women's section is doing 20 to 25% kind of a growth. I think that is a completely another segment which probably none of us, including us, focusing on. So if you really look at, go beyond the Select City and Palladium and look at consumer base elsewhere, I think there is a huge opportunity. And I just picked up a couple of opportunities. And another question which Nagesh was saying, you know, I mean, what about this 35-year-old and 45-year-old and why you are only talking about 18 to 20? Also, I think, you know, the research has shown India has got only two sets of consumers. There is this, there's no pre-independence consumers and then post-independence consumers. Because typically, you know, in any international market, you will find that older consumer behave in a certain manner. For 35 to 45, 50 will behave in a certain manner. Then there is a youth consumer. Today, because most of the generation like us being denied, you know, some of the Western things, you know, it could be a Starbucks or it could be, you know, visiting a department store. Today, the research has very clearly shown that the behavior pattern of an older consumer, 40, 50, is very similar to, you can actually picture yourself if you are 45, 50, and you have a teenager. There is not much difference between your habit and your teenager habit.
You have no option. They make you behave like themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, I think we are in a stage where we have a large consumer base behaving in a similar manner. But having said that, I think e-commerce is also, not e-commerce, the online also is providing us an opportunity, not really need to segment the consumer. There is an opportunity actually to talk to the consumer one-on-one, which is another big opportunity.
I think the interesting point that you mentioned is just not looking at India as only the top 3 cities, top 5 cities, and the top few malls. And I was with the V-Mart team. V-Mart is listed, so you see the opportunities. 1,000 crore retailer, but if you look at their stores, they're all in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. And maybe 90% of them is apparel, and not necessarily branded apparel, but all labels and brands that they have created. So tremendous opportunity which is sitting in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, if you look at the whole aspirations of the market. And I was also told they break even in 6 months or 9 months or 1 year, rather than, you know, in some places where it takes you 18 months or 24 months to break even. Before I come to you, Prashant, and you, I don't know whether you have access to your group's brick and mortar business data, but I'm sure as above you have a lot of access to the movement of the so-called cursor, and you know everything that happens, yeah? How do you look at consumers when you look at a brand like Above, or the way you are targeting consumers? And also share with us the difference like between the tier 1, tier 2, and the tier 3, tier 4. And I would love if you could share with us experience of the consumer and the opportunities, because I would love to see if some of the audience can pick 1 or 2 learnings from our discussions and take it off.
So I think, firstly, clearly there are lots of various segments of consumers out there, and each behaves in its own way slightly differently. So for a brand, it's always better to make sure that you're very clear demographically, psychographically, which segment you are attacking. And I think insights are quite different. In the case of ABOF, we chose to focus on the convenience-seeking millennial. I think that was the convenience-seeking millennial, right? Because in the millennial generation also you have people who are discount-seeking, and you have people who are more convenience-seeking, and I think...
So convenience-seeking is children who stay with their parents and don't make their bed and neither make a cup of tea and expect the parents to do everything. Is that the convenience-seeking millennial? Sort of. So I've defined it right for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So this is the, you know, here and now generation, etc. Now, you know, there are 2 or 3 things that we've also... We learned a little bit of this through research that we did before we launched the business, and some of it we've discovered over the last 18 months after launch. I think one is that consumer is actually spoiled for choice for sure, right? And I think if you compare even 3 years back versus today, a lot many more global brands are available, both in the physical retail world as well as the e-com world. And I think it's quite clear that if you are wanting to talk to that consumer, there is a certain expectation they have around, let's say, either the range or the assortment or the experience, et cetera, which is, and they're going to constantly benchmark you with a very wide array of competitors. So I think that's the spoil for choice. I think the second is that they are bolder now in their choices, actually. So for example, you know, when we launched Sculpt by Shahid Kapoor, that athleisure brand, I think we were using very classic thinking on okay, so the line has to be balanced, you know, you have to have so much edgy, so much fashion, so many essentials, etc., you know, otherwise this will not work because consumers, you know, will typically veer towards basics in a certain way and so on and so forth. Now, the brand has been live for 6 months. It's rocking online. It sells without discounts and stuff. And I think what was an eye-opener for all of us was that the edgy and the fashion products sell exceedingly well because they're very differentiated. You know, they are unique. They are, you know, not available elsewhere. And the basics or the regular stuff, it doesn't sell as well, actually.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So the consumer is very bold in choices, unlike what I think history might be or maybe slightly older consumer might be, because this is also targeted at slightly the younger consumer. I think the third thing we discovered partly through research earlier on was that there is a lot of the use and throw fashion happening now in India, which is the fast fashion world of the Western world. So you speak to consumers, you know, women in particular, by the way, where, you know, you talk to a young lady or a girl and they'll tell you that, you know, I buy a dress, I wear it once, maybe twice, and that's about it. And they don't buy, you know, they don't wear it the third time. So, and consequently, automatically, the shift they have made in their mind is that they would not buy a 5,000 rupee dress, right? They will not, because, you know, I'm going to use it only once or twice. I don't want to repeat that dress. I party very frequently as a consumer. You know, I go out twice a week, thrice a week, and I need to sort of not repeat my dress, and therefore, you know, I need that kind of price point for a product which is, you know, reasonably fashionable. So I think these are the 2 or 3 things that we discovered,
Wonderful.
which were quite interesting for us as we thought about how this
You
is
brought
evolving.
me into the next part of the question that I wanted to ask about price, but before that, let's do an audience check. How many of you have thrown a garment in the last 1 week? Not one. Oh, there's only one. Oh, there are two of them. Are Harminder, I know which garment you threw. Come on. Yeah, the one with the lungi dance one. I'm talking of fashionable garment that you have thrown. So look at this, okay. How many of you throw your garments once in 4 weeks or once in 6 weeks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Your girlfriend? Oh, I have a solution for you. I know of a startup, once you post your garment, okay, automatically in a week's time it changes the color and design. You don't have to throw. The same face, same body, color design changes as per fashion. So, I mean, there are lots of things happening. This is for startups who want to start here. Huh? It's all wonderful. But anyway, we were talking before, Tushar, and you said sexy is out, cool is in. Yeah, that's what you said, yeah? And I have heard this cool and chill dad a lot of times. So we are actually in that time between being chilled and being cool. So tell me, cool, massification of fashion and pricing, how does it fit in? Because what I see is a lot of garments are being sold, numbers are increasing, but the value is not increasing. And most of our retailers, we want our sales per square foot to go, our margins per square foot to go, and we want less people to service. And we have more people coming and buying cheap things. So I want the whole panel to talk about massification of fashion, of profitability of retail fashion, and all this about chill and cool, because that also means that you're bringing fashion very fast.
On the sexy and cool, so what we have seen over the years is sexy is out, cool is in. So men carrying briefcase is out, men carrying backpacks is in. Going to the office in your black shoes is out. Going to your office with Facebook and the new companies coming in with your sneakers, or what Steve Jobs used to wear, New Balance shoes, is in. So the sexy is out. That's what we are seeing. The trend in our retail stores when we sell shoes, we are selling sneakers in shoes which sell black and brown, but the sneakers are picking up, especially those white sneakers. So young women want comfort. If you see the new trend, and that is happening in the sports industry, where shoes with laces are there, but there's a different segment of comfort shoes. That's a new thing we are seeing. Comfort is in. It doesn't have to be lace, but you wear comfortable shoes. Right? Cool is the new trend. That's what we are seeing. And the second thing on the pricing going lower, I think it's a volume business now. It's no more that business of selling something for 15,000 or 10,000 rupees or even 2 lakh rupees. You are in that segment. There's a customer for that. There's always a customer for that. With the recession happening in 2008 and 9 in the US, a lot of brands got finished, and the new brands that emerged were where the price points were lower. And if you see today, Primark in UK is doing crazy numbers. People go there, there's a line there. You don't see that customer lining up outside Zara or even lining up outside Marks and Spencer, because that has changed. Quality is different, but people are looking for low price product. And like somebody said here that on Instagram you posted once, you don't want to see that again. And the volume business is what is going to happen, but there will be an industry for the premium and the luxury. There will be a business, but the growth, a lot of growth will come in from the low price product. From the low price product, retailers who are into that market, focusing on tier 2, tier 3, where the rentals are lower, cost of operation is lower, then going to a mall like a Palladium or a Select or a Mall of India, pay crazy rental, and then waiting for the customer to come in. I might as well go to a tier 2, price it low, let the customer walk in, my risk is lower, my rental to revenue share is lower. So that's, the volume business is what you see now. And just before I finish, a lot of customers from Linking Road, from Mumbai, and the Fashion Street are moving towards shopping mall, but they are going to Forever 21 and H&M. So their customers migrating from 200 rupee Linking Road to branded product. But it's 200 or 250 rupees.
Wow. So this also shows there's a huge opportunity. This is lovely. When we were sitting and chatting, Prashant coming from the e-commerce field, we were talking about massification and pricing. He just went and Googled or went into the Myntra site, and we said, do we have garments starting at 199? He had 199, 229, 326 for a t-shirt for the men. It's amazing as to what's happened to the pricing. I think that's a very, very big opportunity. Between the first two sets of questions that the panelists answered, there is a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 opportunity, and there's an opportunity for pricing to play an important role, and we are talking of volumes. And these three probably are opportunities which can actually make businesses actually work. So, Suresh, tell me one thing, what is J? Because every time he said Suresh J, I thought DJ, RJ, Suresh J. I was just wondering, anybody knows what J stands for? There's a gift voucher here for that. Anybody knows what J stands for? You're not from the Arvind group. Are you from the Arvind group? Oh, then you say what J stands for, no? Maybe Joseph. She says baby Joseph, baby Joseph. Maybe Joseph. No, it's not Suresh Joseph. Anybody else wants to try? There's a gift voucher, there's an iPhone. See that hand? Yeah, tell me. You're from Arvind Group. Oh, no, you're not allowed. You have to. Anyhow, Suresh, maybe you want to say and then answer my question here.
No, it's the same as what BS stands for.
BS, everybody knows, Bandar Singh. Yeah? No, so Suresh, you have dealt with variety of brand. Yeah. Let's talk about this whole pricing factor. Why is it that you looked at everything on the upper end, but you had this Mega Mart and now it's Unlimited, which is playing in a slightly different price segment. What is the opportunity there and what is the behavior you're seeing there?
No, I think whatever we say, that India is a very, very price-sensitive market. Even if you talk about the high-end brands, say beyond a point, you won't be able to price it. See, that's one of the reasons, if you really look at it, people have been talking about the growth of luxury market in India. I think it has not gone beyond 3 to 4 stores for each of those brands. And even those 3 to 4 stores, maybe 2 stores will do well and the third one will struggle. So I think primarily that attitudinally, if you really look at we as a value system of this country, of course it is changing. We are all more towards a self-denial than self-indulgence. Now, of course, the self-indulgence part is really coming up. But in spite of that, the value system is very much towards the price, the value pricing rather than you're willing to pay a premium. So if you really look at the market, I think, if you really look at the organized market, it's around $8 billion. And in that, $6 billion actually is the mid-premium market where I think most of the brands are playing. There is a mass market which is around 1.5 billion, but if you extend that to the unbranded and unorganized retail, that could be as high as 30 to 40, almost no $30 billion. So I think that is a place I think the growth is going to really happen, which clearly is an indicator that India is a very much price-driven market. And if you look at any of the categories, if you take any of the other categories, the largest market will always be a mass market. Fashion is one industry where, while largest market is still, of course, the mass market, but primarily driven by unorganized sector. So that I think there is going to be a huge opportunity for an organized sector in the mass market because this industry cannot behave differently. Even if you look at any of the developed countries, the larger, like for example, Walmart is one of the largest apparel retailer actually, while nobody knows, people will think Walmart more as a grocery retailer, but in terms of the size, they are the largest apparel retailer in US. Similarly, Target. So they are all much bigger than, say, an Abercrombie and Fitch or a American Eagle. So not just in India, but worldwide, I think it's a mass market which is larger, and then I think more so in India, where value system-wise, I think we are much more price conscious compared to any of the other countries.
Also, I think if you talk to a lot of retailers of the fashion brands, they are saying that their non-full price sale has moved from 20% of the business now to between 35 to 50% of the business, which means the Indian consumer is getting used to buying a brand at between whatever X discount, almost 6 months a year. So we are also driving the so-called premium market into price war and therefore bringing price into the play. I just want to shift the gear a little bit now and look at the whole channel play that is happening. And I would love to hear from you, Prashant, to say that you are now, as of today, only an online retailer. Okay, and everybody is talking about future being omni-channel because the consumer is 24/7 and consumer is switching screens and consumer is shopping day and night. Okay, so do you see that at one point of time, of course, there's nobody from the investor community here, do you see the online Aditya Birla Above merging with the offline Aditya Birla Fashion and therefore becoming an omni-channel player? Is that the way, or if there are people sitting here doing only online or offline, would you recommend them to be only online, or would you recommend that go omni-channel and go multi-channel?
So I think my personal view is that omni-channel is actually a more appropriate business model. I think the reason being mostly the distortion that unfortunately has gone on for too long in the e-com world in India, where e-com is still seen as equal to discounts, and I think that is changing, but that's changing very, very slowly, unfortunately. Ideally, this should have happened a couple of years back, didn't happen, and I think it's dragged on for too long. I think there is also some insight that we got from our research where just because the stage of the market is such that many of the consumers, even the younger ones, by the way, are actually doing dual shopping. So, if you ask them, what they'll say is that some of the lower price stuff, they are perfectly happy to snack in the online world. They consider it as low risk effort, just buy 2 t-shirts, doesn't fit, return, it's fine, etc., etc. But the moment you start to try and sell to them slightly more premium merchandise, which could be a 2,000 rupee jeans, it could be a 3,000 rupee jacket, etc., I think that's when they become a bit uncomfortable because they believe that, even if they were to buy something, exchange or return may not solve the fit problem for them, and it's premium merchandise, etc., etc. So they would rather go to a physical store and try out a few options and then actually make a purchase. So I think even the younger consumer in India today is actually bifurcating the wallet, and one piece of the wallet is definitely moved online, but a part of it is still offline. And I think once the brands, because one of the other things in India, unlike the Western world, is that many of the brands are still new, less known, not at scale. So it's not like, I know the fit of this brand completely, right? So, that comfort doesn't exist today in many of the consumers' mind. So I think one does see a fair bit of merit in therefore having a physical presence as a brand. So if I was to state a point of view, I'd say that ABOF stores in a few catchments, in a few cities as a starting point is probably a good thing to do. We have been having that sort of conversation internally. which will therefore allow a certain segment of the market to experience the more premium merchandise in certain categories, like I said, jackets and jeans and some of the other bottom wear and stuff like that. And I think that'll add to the brand experience. One of the things we've learned in our research that we've done is that a very typical traditional physical retail store, that kind of format is probably not exciting enough, not differentiated enough. So a lot more thinking has to go into create a very different retail experience.
Wow.
Right? Which is like self-checkout is an example, right? I mean, how do you enable self-checkout of a customer? What do you create in the store which is not available in any other fashion retailer, which will create that pull and that sense of uniqueness in you as a brand and as a retailer? I mean, I go back to the Sculpt example that some of the merchandise is not available in India in any other brand or any other retailer for that matter. I think that's the kind of thing that needs to happen.
But did you have to spend a lot of money telling the consumers about Sculpt?
We haven't done too much branding.
So they just discovered on
They
their
discover
own.
it.
Shahid Kapoor and I come to
They just
above
discovered
and-
it. I mean, it's unbelievable. I kid you not. It's unbelievable. It is simply unbelievable what's happening to that brand. Because when we launched, we didn't realize this will be how successful it is. We had planned for 30-40% discount. We had planned for a certain kind of throughput. And we've seen far more throughput at practically zero discount. I mean, it's the only brand in e-com world which sells on no discount. I mean, it's unbelievable.
So
And just because it's differentiated, I mean, that's the only thing about it. It's completely differentiated.
So good learning. I think the key that's coming out is the omni-channel. I think that's a very important part. If the consumer is shopping 24/7 in multiple channels, then as brands, as retailers, we have no option than not to be there 24/7 with them. Dilip, how are you seeing the whole online impact on the business? And are you seeing online becoming a very important part? You are selling globally, I mean, from Las Vegas to Russia, Moscow, and all parts of the world. So talk about the omni-channel play of high design. Second is also talk about, have you ever thought of bringing down a new price segment for high design? I know you are allergic to using synthetic, but I mean, you make 500% margin. You can bring it down and sell it at a lower price here.
I think regarding e-commerce, in India it's grown very rapidly, obviously. We're seeing it, in fact, I'm not sure all of that was add-on because our sales in other channels slowed down. But we're watching it the last few months that while e-commerce is still growing, not at the crazy pace it was, but the other channels are catching up. So I think the market is growing, but not growing as rapidly as e-commerce would like you to believe.
But tell me, I mean, from your experience, would you recommend starting your own online vertical within, or go and ride on somebody else's online technology, or like whatever smart company that they are talking of providing online, or going into marketplaces? I mean, what would your recommendation be?
I think both are necessary for different reasons. I think our own website is important for building the brand. And that's where people come when they want to know about you, when they want to get to know you. But if we certainly don't have the footfalls to be able to justify only being on that one. But internationally, you asked me the question internationally, e-commerce has opened up channels which were never there before for a brand like ours, which didn't have hundreds of millions of dollars. In the United States, for example, as we've been, for the last year and a half, we've been only e-commerce, and e-commerce has been extremely good to us. It's made us profitable within the first year. It allows you to open up channels which you could have never opened up.
So would you like to share, if it is not very confidential, you are one of the first few brands in the country which went on to Amazon US, Amazon.com. Okay, how to get it on there? I mean, how did Dilip get onto Amazon? I mean, what did he do? I mean, can somebody use your charm to get on there? I mean, some inroads.
Well, I think Amazon itself is is more a mechanical thing than anything else. I mean, all the string pulling in India with Amazon India helps very little. But e-commerce isn't only Amazon, and there are many Amazons. I think when we started in the United States, and we would love Amazon to take us seriously, all we got is machines handling us. But Amazon, through the United States, we got Amazon Canada, which itself is is to us is very successful and is doing extremely well. And there are others who are smaller, and to launch you, we were very successful on e-bags, for example, and certain little bit more upmarket ones. And if you want to get Amazon, you have to be successful there because they are watching you constantly on how you're doing on the other ones. And watching our success on e-bags is after that is when Amazon came. Amazon US has come to us.
So there's no substitute to being successful within the home country before somebody picks you up.
Well, there's no point going on Marketplace Amazon because you will be on page 282.
282 is very optimistic.
Yeah, well, so forget it.
Very, very optimistic.
Yeah.
Biju, I want you to put the lens of an investor, also part of El Capital, or whatever is the new name there. How do you look at startups in India who want to be only online? Okay, from brick and mortar they move off and go into online. Or how do you look at the whole channel play? How do you look at the profitability of the channel play? How do you look at the traditional Indian retailers and fashion brands looking at the current scenario? If you have to help them say, hey guys, in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe you do 1, 2, 3 things, it'll be good because you've seen investors, you've invested some places you would have not invested, but you have insight into the business, some success, some not so successful. Talk about the channel and talk about the opportunities.
Okay, so let me actually address the opportunity first. If you really look at, if I were to take Suresh's numbers of 250,000 crore garment market in India, and if you look at our population, which is about 120 crores, what does it mean? It means that on an average, we're spending 2,000 rupees per year on garments, okay? If you look at, let's say, for example, the branded players, and Suresh is amongst them, and you have Madhura and many others, collectively put together are less than 20% of that market. Yeah. Them and all the others put together. So which means that there is an 80% of this market which we don't even see in a conference like this, whom we don't know by name, but are actually in the market and servicing the needs of India's consumers, who are on the average spending 2,000 rupees per year on garments, okay? So obviously when we talk about price, and we talk about price sensitivity of the Indian consumer, there is great price sensitivity of the Indian consumer. When we talk about market, and I like the comment that was made earlier about the fact that we shouldn't look at the market in the top 2 or 3 metros of this country. We should look at the market in the smaller towns. We should look at the market in the villages and figure out that, because that is where there is what we might loosely define as unorganized, but they're all extremely well organized in the way they actually are able to translate fashion into product, into distribution, and into sale. And if you look at it, they don't have the hassles that many of the organized players have. Their speed to market is between a week to 10 days. You go to Howrah market, you go to Chickpet market in Bangalore, the fashion that you will see on Hindi serials will come out next day as protos, and within a week it's in that market. Far faster than what any of us can do in an organized industry. So I think when we look at the opportunity, and certainly from a startup perspective, if somebody can figure out a brilliant way of being able to tap into that opportunity, tap into 2 very critical factors. One we loosely define as fast fashion, and how do you make sure that you actually are fast fashion rather than just taking 6 months, 9 months on these autumn, winter, spring, summer collections that we all, lock ourselves into for a long period of time. How do you respond to the market in a very, very fast manner? And the second is, how do you make sure that you respond to it in a very affordable manner? In a manner which will make your garments within the reach of the large number of Indians who are there. And I think when we, I've been just doing a quick survey of this room. We have roughly about 25% of the audience are women, and about 75% are men. Even if I look to the men, of the 75%, about 20% of them are wearing jackets. 99% of those jackets are actually black or grey. If I look to the men who are not wearing jackets, about 90% of those shirts are whites and pastels. There are probably a few who venture to wear a color different from a white or a pastel. If you look at the women, about 10% of those women are wearing Western outfits, 90% are wearing Indian outfits. Indian origin, ethnic design, fusion, whichever way you might call it. But every one of those outfits are actually different from each other. I can't find similarities for the women. The trouble that we have with the fashion industry in India, we tend to kind of ignore the women and think that they are a complex animal and we can't cater to their needs. But the market and the opportunity is actually in women, which is why you're seeing in terms of valuations, the women's brands which have made a mark have actually managed to get a far greater valuation than what the men's have been able to.
I should have kept you engaged much more because I left you there and you are watching everybody's tops and bottoms and colors and shirts and good that you do.
Let me tell you the other thing,
Yeah.
which is that while the women are very different in terms of what they wear, when you look at their footwear, is relatively similar in terms of design.
Wow. So I'm sorry, I don't want to look down and wow, that's strong observation. So another very important lesson is that if you want to run a business, you observe your customer very well. Let me tell you, I used to work for Corona Footwear for 3 years, and every time I used to walk with my wife, I used to keep looking down and keep getting banging on my head. Look up where you're looking down always, yeah? But observing your customers. Tushar, I think he said quite a few things in terms of the opportunities and looking at the smaller price, lower price, the tier 3, tier 4, fast fashion. You are sitting in a place where logistics is there to allow fast fashion. What is fast fashion in Dubai? And you've been in the Indian market now for so many years. Do you think it's possible to do the fast fashion in India? Especially for an organized player. I'm not talking of the Howrah market or the Linking Road market. And if yes, how? Give us some tips.
Dubai is a different market. So shopping is pleasure and it's a national sports there. Because everything is 50 degrees, everything is air conditioned. The shopping malls are, they are huge. In Dubai, everything is big, large, longest, largest, tallest. Otherwise, you're nobody in Dubai, right? And they are very good at marketing at what they do. So I think it's a very different example to compare India to Dubai. Very small population. UAE as a country has a 9 million population, but at the airport of Dubai, they get 70 million people transiting, but they get 13 million people coming out of the airport to do the shopping or to meet relatives, and they go back. Again, Dubai Mall has everything. There's a clinic, there is a driving license you can get whatever you want, right? Supermarket, laundry, everything. To compare to Dubai to the fast fashion, it's a small country. We have a warehouse in Jabil Ali where I can transfer my stock within 2.5 hours to any of my stores without any octroi or without any tax or without anybody stopping me on the road why I'm taking the goods from here to this city. When you talk fast fashion, I don't know if it is infrastructure or fast fashion overall.
Let's talk about, in fact, some of them may be brands and manufacturers. How do you actually build this whole mindset to be able to deliver fashion on a weekly basis? You know, here the fabric guy gives you a 6-month seasonal palette. Everything is all 6 months, like you said, autumn, winter, and spring, summer. How do you change the mindset? What mindset should we be using?
2 things. First, you have to be ready to be with your customer wherever he is. So as a company today, we are changing the model where we are saying we are not only going to be retail, we are going to be retail, e-commerce, third party, our own. We are going to be shopping shops, and we are going to be in the customer's face. So if a customer in Ludhiana or a customer in, I don't know, Vishakhapatnam, I cannot open a store there because I have 30 customers there, but my e-commerce will be able to deliver. So first you have to be ready for the channel. What is the channel? You have to be everywhere if you want to expand. And when you talk about fast fashion delivering within a week, I think the fastest route is courier or e-commerce. I don't see any other route in India to deliver within a week today because of infrastructure. To look at the fast fashion, what Zara or other brands do, they go to the runway show, they go online, they're monitoring the YouTubes and they're monitoring the people that kids are following or young kids are following, and whatever they are wearing, I wouldn't use the word, I would say they are taking inspiration from them.
No observation, take inspiration.
Inspiration from them.
This is nice.
Right? It is inspiration, inspired fashion, and deliver it to customer. Forget doing, I want to sell 5,000 t-shirts of this. You'll have to work with job workers, get the small fabric, turn it in fashion and deliver it. I don't know if that answers, because the fast fashion I'm little
Well, I think if that is the way, that is the way. If that's what the consumer is wanting, we have no options. If you want to be in business, you want to be an entrepreneur in India, that's the challenge. I mean, if infrastructure is poor, you can't just beat the infrastructure. Wonderful. I think we have covered 3 or 4 areas out of all that I wanted to cover. We have just about 10 minutes left, and I thought we can take a few questions. We want to close it at 1:45. My request is whoever wants to ask the question, please ask a question. If you start making a comment about it, we'll take your name and bring you into the panel next year. Okay? So, can we bring the mic here, please? And the next mic there. Yeah, here's the mic. Keep the questions short, please.
Just a question to all the panelists, actually taking off from your last comment about the manufacturing supply chain. So I've been on both sides. We talked a lot about e-commerce, which is only 2 or 3% of the market. How is that going to change the manufacturing industry in India on the fashion business? Are we going to become more competitive or less with smaller production runs, with shorter time being? China, with all the supply chain industry around it, is much easier to cater to those needs. I would just like to know everybody's view on that point.
How would e-commerce change the way the manufacturers will have to work in the business of fashion? Any one of you can take.
I'll take this question. See, I think, in terms of the e-commerce is not going to change the manufacturing completely. I think what it will do is, today in e-commerce, you will be able to very quickly identify what is doing well on a daily basis. In fact, nowadays, you have websites which tell you, analyzing all the sales of all the e-commerce players across the world and pick up, these are the top 10 styles, which has done very well. So actually you can produce based on what sold well, what's the trend which has done well the previous day, and then produce. So you will find that some part of manufacturing shifting to that kind of a fast fashion, but may not be the entire 100% of the fashion, but you may find 5 to 10% of manufacturing shifting to that kind of picking up the trend and then producing and then catering to the market immediately. So that's how the e-commerce will impact the manufacturing.
There are 2 things that we wanted to discuss, but for the paucity of time, we have not discussed. But during our discussions before we came here, these 2 words came up. One is collaboration. I think that is becoming very, very important. What Suresh said also meant an e-commerce player collaborating with a manufacturer so that real-time information is there and the real-time production can happen. And the second is personalization. I think these 2 words, when you apply to your businesses, there's a huge, huge amount of opportunities which are emerging in the country. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, you've spoken about the transformation of the consumers, but what about the transformation of the stores? As of now, if you compare the Indian stores, there's not much of technological transformation in stores. When do you see technology actually coming to the stores and transforming and catering?
Wonderful. Maybe Dilip, you would want to take up, or when do you see our stores getting transformed? So she's basically saying, can we have Apple kind of stores in India? Everybody operating with that kind of a technology, fast and access and with technology in hands. Anybody wants to take that?
I think the store experience becomes incredibly important because otherwise you can't recognize you anymore out of those 500 stores. What we've done is, we used to go international to get inspiration. But for the first time, what we've done is looked at a person within India who understands the Indian young consumer best. In fact, we've taken somebody like Ayaz, who've done all the socials in Bombay, who's never done a retail store, but gets the Indian young consumer, asked him to go deep into the brand and come out with something which is uniquely identifiable and fits your brand. So I think that's the number one thing, get the experience which is clear and identifiable. Now regarding technology is just an enabler for communication in your store, and you need it, but it's an enabler rather than the core of what a store should be.
Tushar, would you agree that for the experience we require the last mile, our sales associates who are important, or the technology? What is it? Because now you have stores without sales associates and they're talking of delivering experience.
I don't have an answer for that. But what I can tell you, it's going to change. We didn't know that Facebook existed 10 years back or 5 years back. Today it's worth, I don't know, 10, 20, $30 billion. Nobody has seen such a transformation. I think it's not only the stores, also the shopping malls will have to change for the experience. What I understand from my friends who have shopping malls in China and Singapore, they say Singapore, the e-commerce has not hit them big, because they say we go down and the shopping is there. It's faster to go to a shopping mall in Singapore than order online. But when it comes to China, it has changed because of the distance between the cities. So what the shopping mall has done in China is saying, now we are focusing on more entertainment, cinemas, more food courts, snow parks, and then shopping becomes a side of it. Before you used to go shopping and then watch a movie. That's what people are doing. Quick example is the VCR business, which I was telling at the thing. 1980, I watched all my movies on VCR, all pirated, the cinemas died, and look at cinema today. The popcorn is more expensive than the ticket. It is 15 days in the theater, not 1 year, what used to be before. Shorter movies, but look at what happened in the news today, where Amir Khan is going to be paid $500 million for 500 crore for his production of his movies for Netflix. So the business has changed, and I will salute the person who gets that formula right for stores. It's going to be digital, it's going to be people, it's going to be smaller, bigger. At least I don't have an answer today. But I do know it's going to change, and it's going to be drastic.
But you will not only salute, but you also invest in that company? If somebody is willing to do that?
Why not?
Indians में केवल salute करने से थोड़ी होता है. You got your answer. We'll take one more question probably. Oh, there are too many hands there. We've already come to the table. Yeah, we'll go there, please. And then we'll go to the lady last, yeah? Can somebody bring the mic here? Run, come on, run. Fast fashion. Yes, please.
Yeah, hi. Everyone is talking about right now about the e-commerce part. So just want to understand how much business from retail to e-commerce will shift in next 5 years, like any kind of ideas, because I guess it is definitely going to affect big time in retail part.
The statistics says that 10% of the business in 2020 will be e-commerce. Currently 8% is modern retail. One is talking of 20% being modern retail. I don't think it is going to go from 8 to 20%. But would it be fair to say that between 20-25% will be modern and online put together of the overall market? But still it's very large. $600 billion today moving to $1 trillion in 2020. And 20% of that is $200 billion. Anybody can add number of zeros of $200 billion? $200 billion कितना करोड़ होता है, उस करोड़ में कितना zero होता है? This time it's an iPad. Anybody? No. Can you move the mic there to the lady, please? Yeah. That's the last question, and then we'll have a India Fashion Forum's book released.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Hi, good afternoon. So I have a slightly marketing 101 question regarding branding and strategy. So I think in the beginning of this discussion, it was very interesting because a lot of you were talking about customer segmentation, and then the speaker was talking about how you should not segment the market because you're obviously reducing your opportunity for sales. So as a customer, there's brands like Marks and Spencer's, which is catered to older women. Or then there's Forever 21, which is catered to the younger population. And then there are brands like Zara and H&M, which is a universal shopping experience across ages. So I just want to know your views as, branding and strategy heads as to what works and what will continue to work in this age of increasing marketing, increasing penetration due to social media.
Any one of you can take it. What will work in a one sentence? $1 million question. Yeah? Yeah?
I think...
Go ahead. Yeah, it's working.
So, we spent some time trying to build ABOF in the last 18 months. I think it's an incredibly tough question. I think there are no easy answers on this one. I think it's a very expensive proposition to build a brand in this country. There is a lot of money being thrown, particularly in fashion as a space. And therefore, if you are a fashion brand trying to break through the clutter and make a mark, I think the marketing answer is not very obvious. The classic marketing answer, I mean. I think what helps though is something which is very differentiated and distinctive, because that sort of sells itself. and it creates a bit of a virtuous cycle. So I think the right question to ask in my mind if you are running a business is, are you sufficiently differentiated to create your own compelling proposition and therefore the virtuous cycle of the consumer, the word of mouth, etc., etc. I think that's the most appropriate economic and financially sound way in the country today to build something in fashion.
As a student of marketing, I would suggest, and all of us as Indians must be very proud, there's a candy brand called Pulse, which got launched 9 months back. And without much of advertising, it's a 100 crore brand. I think the candy is a 1 rupee candy, or whatever it is. And now today they say they're going to go on television advertising. It's an amazing creation of a 1 rupee candy brand of 100 crores within 9 months in a country like this, which reaches 60% of the distribution outlets. So I think India has some fantastic examples of creating brand out of nowhere. But thank you very much. I think we need to give a big applause first to yourself, for being such a wonderful audience. To yourself also, such a light one. Come on. Yeah. Now maybe we can do a better one for the audience, for our panelists. They have done a good job. Thank you very much.